When we stepped back into the inn, I felt a tension in the air. It was as if the walls of the inn were warning us. That night, Yuna and I decided to examine the inn's old records. While going through the old ledgers and notes left by my father, I found a letter. This letter belonged to one of the inn's former owners who had been murdered. The letter contained clues about the tragedy that occurred that night. As I read the letter, a sense of fear gripped me. This curse wasn't just confined to the inn, it was also following us. It was clear that Yuna had a connection to this inn, but we hadn't yet figured out exactly what it was. I knew we had to do something, but I didn't know what. That night, as I wandered through the inn, I heard a sound. It was coming from Yuna's room. When I opened the door, I realized that Yuna wasn't in bed. I heard that whisper again. My heart started pounding. Where was Yuna? Was she wandering around the inn? Or had something else happened? Filled with fear, I began walking through the dark corridors of the inn. The echo of my footsteps bounced off the empty walls of the inn. Finally, I noticed that the door to an old room was slightly open. When I stepped inside, I saw Yuna sitting on the floor. In her hand was a photograph of the inn's former owners. These people, I know them, Yuna said, her voice tinged with deep sorrow. I have a connection to this inn, but I can't fully remember what it is. Her words deeply affected me. I needed to learn how Yuna was connected to this inn. But in the meantime, the mysterious forces within the inn were also beginning to act against us. Seeing Yuna holding the photograph of the inn's former owners, the dark feeling within me deepened. The bond between her and the inn was far stronger than I had imagined. However, there were still missing pieces, and I had to put them together to uncover the truth. The cold air inside the inn felt like eyes watching us. Yuna, how do you know these people? Is there anything you can remember? I asked, trying to keep the concern out of my voice. I can't remember, but I know I'm connected to this inn in some way, Yuna said, her eyes filling with tears. This woman in the photograph, I look so much like her. Could this be related to my past? This question put me in a deep quandary. We decided to search for more information within the inn. Among the old documents and notes left by my father, I tried to find clues about the inn's history. Eventually, I found an old diary. This diary belonged to one of the inn's first owners. As I read through it, my hair stood on end. The diary told of a horrific tragedy that had taken place in this inn years ago. According to the diary, the family who first owned the inn was drawn to disaster by a mysterious visitor. This visitor bore a striking resemblance to the woman in the photograph of Yuna. The visitor was the daughter of the family, but her presence brought a great curse with it. On the night she stayed at the inn, the entire family was murdered, with only the woman surviving. She became known as the bearer of the inn's curse. When Yuna learned this truth, she shivered. Could this woman be one of my ancestors? If so, is this curse connected to me? She asked fearfully. It's possible, I said, though I felt deep fear as I spoke. If this curse is your family's legacy, the restless spirits inside the inn may be seeking you. This thought unsettled me. As we were thinking about what we should do within the inn, we suddenly heard a whisper from the corridor. This time, the whisper was distinct. It was as if someone was calling out Yuna's name. Yuna stepped toward the whisper. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice trembling. The whisper led us to the inn's oldest and most abandoned room. Together, Yuna and I stepped inside. The door slowly creaked open, and a cold gust of air hit my face. In the center of the room stood an old chest. Its lid was slightly ajar, as if inviting us in. We slowly opened the chest and pulled out an old, yellowed letter. When I opened the letter, I couldn't believe my eyes. The letter was written by one of the inn's first owners, and it mentioned Yuna by name. However, the letter felt like a warning from beyond time. The letter read, "Yuna, you are the bearer of the curse. For the inn to find peace, a sacrifice must be made. The only way to break the chain of the curse is to atone for the past. The spirits want your soul." When I read these lines, an indescribable fear took hold of me. Yuna might have to make a sacrifice to end this curse. I didn't know how to tell her this truth. But when Yuna read the letter, she understood. "So, my fate is to end the inn's curse," she said, her voice trembling. "No, this can't be true. There must be another way," I said desperately. But Yuna was determined to face her destiny. "If we don't do this, the curse will continue forever. Neither I nor the spirits of this inn will ever find peace. That's why I have to make the sacrifice." At that moment, the cold air inside the inn intensified. The whispers grew louder, as if the spirits were waiting for Yuna's decision. My eyes filled with tears, but I didn't know what to do. Yuna placed her hand on the chest and closed her eyes. "I must do this," she said firmly, "to end this curse." After she spoke her final words, all the lights in the inn suddenly went out. The room was enveloped in a dark mist. Yuna's voice was never heard again. The lid of the chest closed on its own, and the ominous atmosphere inside the inn disappeared in an instant. The darkness gave way to a peaceful silence. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at the closed lid of the chest. Yuna's sacrifice had ended the inn's curse, but this ending meant a great loss for me. The curse within the inn had finally ended, but it had happened at the cost of Yuna's disappearance. Even years later, as I wandered through the inn, I couldn't help but remember that night. Yuna's sacrifice left a mark on my heart, like a whisper echoing through the walls of the inn. In the end, there was finally peace within this inn. But that peace meant an emptiness for me. Yuna had ended the curse of the inn, but she had also darkened my world. This was the true face of the inn's curse, and as the last person to witness its end, I would always remember Yuna's sacrifice.